Welcome to the TotaLand.com overview slideshow, the purpose of which is to provide a somewhat comprehensive review of terminology, concept, use, structure, that type of thing, prior to actually getting into the website and looking around. The slideshow is arranged in with 6 main discussion items, each one of which has a few slides, and we will go over all of them. The first, why we have a slideshow. We'll go over the concept. We'll look at the web-based solutions for field land work in general, then what distinguishes TotaLand.com, benefits based on respective users' needs, and then safety, security, authority, that type of thing. Why have a slideshow? Well, we use this same slideshow for both demonstrations and for training. When we do training, we always go through this with the new users because it gives a good basis before getting into the site itself, understanding structure and concepts and that type of thing. But the structure of the slideshow allows me to stay focused without getting off on a tangent. Actually allows us to cover more information in less time, so it's more efficient for everybody. And it is it's a great way to make the demonstration itself more meaningful, more effective. The overall concept is to use technology to streamline processes in field land work. Virtually eliminates paperwork. The users can stay focused on their research, negotiation, and closing without having all the paperwork, the duplicate data entry, transposing information from one source to another, that type of thing. And the data, of course, is shared in a controlled fashion, always up to date. So there's less time spent sharing the information manually, and it's always real time. So it's as recent as possible. So the concept as a whole for a web-based field land system is that everybody shares a single database, and you do that through a web interface. So those that have access to the data will have real-time access to it, meaning it's as up-to-date as the last user's update or entry of the data. There's no need to compile or synchronize the data, no software to load in the computer, and of course it's a web connection, so anywhere you have an internet connection you can work. So just to go over this point a little bit more, like we will with each bullet point, by having a central database that is accessed by the internet, when users update something on the system, that information is reflected immediately for themselves or for other users, whether it's entering a new landowner, updating a status to say that a tract has been signed, anything. The maps, the reports, statistics, everything are available immediately because everybody's sharing the same database. So the data that is put in can be used for document generation, like executable leases or seismic permits, that type of thing. Reporting, so we'll have ownership reports, LPRs, lease schedules, that type of thing. The mapping, once the mapping is linked, there's no need to update the map, so when somebody makes a change to the data, the online map automatically reflects the changes in that data. And then authority control, this allows those who have the ability to control the authority of its users to make those changes, and those changes are immediate. So whether it's increasing authority, decreasing it, turning them off altogether, there's no delay. Without a system consisting of a central database, data needs to be gathered and compiled manually. The traditional way of doing this would be with spreadsheets. Everybody keeps their own spreadsheets of what they're working on. They send it into a central person who takes those, combines them all together, maybe cleans up the data a little bit, adds up some values, that type of thing. That's not necessary when everything is stored in the same database to begin with. And then there's no batch update of data. What that means is that there are some solutions that essentially everybody has their own little version of the database, and as they update it, their little database is being updated, but not for everyone else to see unless and until they do the batch update where they synchronize it with the central database. So this is skips that step. No software to load on your computer. In the age of internet banking, everybody's pretty much familiar with the concept. If you go to your bank's website, you're not going to have to load a program on your computer. It's simply a web page. You put in a user ID and password. You see only the information that you're allowed to see. You're only able to edit things that the website allows you to edit. And you do this knowing the entire time that your account is just one of thousands or maybe even millions in the database. You're not concerned about people seeing yours unintentionally, and you're not worried about you seeing theirs either. The website can control the authority and access wide range and variety of options for authority levels, and then no versioning issues. This basically means when there needs to be a change to the site for the functionality, appearance, anything like that, there's no need for the users to download and then update anything on their computer. It's just changed automatically on the website. Then of course users can work from any computer with internet access. That's just to make the point that it's not limited to office hours. They can work from home, from their office, from their hotel room, that type of thing, and they'll have everything that they're working on at their disposal. TotaLand.com has several distinguishing characteristics, which we're going to go ahead and get into here. These are all bullet points for which there are additional slides to develop the thought. The Landman's Virtual Office, we'll go over some terminology and symbols, go over the table design and why it matters, licensing issues, the balanced approach between the client obligations and brokerage obligations with regard to using and managing the system, instruments and patent pending abstract assembler linked to the GIS environment, image association, broker and client billing, the perspective of the design, the support, project types, and additional services available. We call TotaLand.com the Landman's Virtual Office because it is a true cloud environment. What that means is the users, when they log on to the website, they don't need to be concerned with where the data is. They just know that it is in a safe, high availability data center with automatic backups. Everything is handled for them. But also from the most immediate perspective is that all of their work is available to them when they log in. So all the documents they've worked on, instruments, notes, comments, maps, everything they need is going to be at their fingertips regardless of what computer they log on from. We'll go over some terminology, definitions, and kind of describe a little bit. This will help, again, the user to get an idea of how the system is structured. Essentially, the highest level is a company. This would be your brokerage or your E&P company, that type of thing. And a company is essentially a collection of users, projects, and library objects, which will make sense in a little bit. But the library objects would be things like your collection of approved paragraph language, your lease forms, your payment forms, that type of thing. A user is going to be unique to the system, have a unique user ID and password. Those with organization level authority will have access to all the projects in that organization. Those with project level authority are put on one project at a time. A project is a collection of users and realm objects, and realm objects is one of the very big distinguishing characteristics of TotaLand, and we will jump right into that. A realm is high level data linked to other realm objects. So here we look at the 6 realms within TotaLand. We've got tracks, contracts, parties, instruments, units, and wells. Tract is just a unit of homogeneous ownership. Contract is a generic term for leases, permits, pipeline rights-of-way, that type of thing. A party is the entity that can have some type of interest in these other realm objects. So it can be an individual, it could be a community, a joint tenancy, a company, a trust, that type of thing. An instrument is just a recorded document. Units and wells are basically self-explanatory. The idea, though, is that all of these objects within a project only have to be entered once and then just linked to the others, which is a major deviation from the norm or how other companies are attempting to create a solution like this. Broker, we will use that interchangeably with the individual user on occasion. The brokerage is basically a company that performs work on behalf of a client or a principal. A client is a company that hires a brokerage to perform the work. The distinction we make as a principal client is when the client also has a license with us, and we will use that interchangeably with principal. Just to spend a little time with this, when the brokerage has a license, they can give clients access to the information at their discretion, without that client needing to have a license with us. And then with the table design, we're going to take just a little discussion about why it matters. In the land business as a whole, all databases are going to be either tract based or lease based. In general, the field acquisition side of it is going to be tract based. The lease management or asset management side of it is going to be lease based. For the tract based and the field acquisition, they care what's going on with the tract. And of course, when it gets into lease management, they care about the obligations and rights to do with individual leases. The TotaLand.com has broken away from being either one. Our old system was tract based. We know all the inherent flaws and shortcomings of a orientation like that, and we got away from it. We have applied for a patent on it, and our patent application is pending right now. But by being neither tract oriented or lease oriented, it greatly makes it much easier for users to learn it, to teach it, and to use it, of course. Also, the design is it facilitates the importing and exporting of data tremendously. We do quite a bit of data importing and of course exporting of all types, whether it's just in reporting or actually exporting the data for uploading into another system. Now, before we look at this, what I'm going to do is switch over very quickly to inside TotaLand, just to give a brief look at how the table structure and the realms manifest themselves. If you remember, we talked about projects and then the 6 realm objects. So we've got tracts, contracts, parties, instruments, units, and wells, all of which have their color coding. And this is just a desktop. This is just this is where all the users land when they log on. They'll see announcements, but this is all just recently viewed items. What we're going to do very quickly is jump into one of these things. We're jumping into a demo project. We can see that it's got all of these realm objects attached, and very quickly we're going to look at tracks, and we're going to take a look at a single tract. The idea being, when we're in this tract, we can see our green icon. We can show our links to everything else. We've got our parties, our contracts, our instruments, units, and wells. And then let's say we want to look at this contract instead. So we click on this, and now we're in this contract, but now we're looking back at the tracts that contract's attached to, the contract, parties, instruments, units, and wells. So this just gives a very brief look at how the table structure and the realms manifest themselves, and I think gives a little better idea of what's going on. So now we'll jump back to the slideshow where we see a very crude diagram of how a tract-oriented system would be organized. Being tracked oriented means that that's the top record in the system, that everything is dependent on there being a tract to attach things to. So in this case, using our terminology of tracts, contracts, and parties, we've got a simple situation here where we have a tract, 2 leases, 2 parties. Very simple. We create a tract record, and then we put in information about the contract and the parties under it, and that's fine. But what happens when you have a system or a situation where the same contract has more than one tract on it? We see contract 1 and contract 1. Since it is a tract oriented system, the tract is at the highest level. The tract is put in, each tract is put in once, but the information attached to them has to be duplicated. It's often done in the background. Our old system did it in the background, make it as transparent to the user as possible. But the issue is it's still there. It's inefficient. It needs to be maintained behind the scenes, and it always needs to be accounted for in reporting and data exporting. We don't have to do that because of this design. This is a little better look at the relationship between the realms. You can see the color coding: contracts, parties, units, wells, instruments, and tracks. All this information is just keyed in once. So the same party could be linked to 40 tracks and 120 instruments, 3 contracts, whatever. And this is not only are you able to control that relationship without duplicating data entry, the relationships or associations themselves have attributes or values, meaning they can have statuses. They can have, like in the case of parties and tracts, we've got their tract ownership. We know what type of interest they have. We have their status. We have notes about their ownership, that type of thing. The contract and party relationship, we can have a status once again, but we can also control things like, let's say the same party is being leased on several different leases, and on the first one they use their P.O. box, on the second one they want to put their attorney's address or something like that. This relationship between the two can have its own attributes, to where we had this person in once, but they can appear in different ways on different leases and that type of thing. So it's a very powerful structure that allows for a great deal of flexibility and ease of use. This is kind of a slide about what I was saying, that the links themselves can have values. Now, jumping on into licensing, what makes TotaLand unique is licensing is never based on the number of users. This is very important for a number of reasons. The main thing is that if you do licensing based on users, you end up almost inevitably trying to minimize the number of accounts you have. And if you do that, then you logically lead to either people doing work outside the system for someone else to key in, which is double work, and you reduce the benefit of the efficiency, or people start sharing accounts. And of course that's bad for security, but also, since TotaLand provides an audit trail of who did what and when and changed it from what to what, the audit trail becomes much less meaningful if people are sharing accounts. And then it's a security issue when somebody leaves. If 4 people are sharing an account, somebody leaves, you have to change the password, get it on to everybody, that type of thing. Also, since there's no limit, the licensing is not based on a number of users. A brokerage can give a client access at no additional charge, and a principal client license covers unlimited brokerage use for that client's projects. So if it's not a matter of forcing every organization to get a license, but it does limit it to the projects and the relationship of the one who does have a license with us, giving them access as necessary. The balanced approach is referring to the fact that the brokerage still does the majority of the work, the setting up. This is not something that creates a burden to the client. This is not something that a client will have to spend a lot of time managing. But for a brokerage, the brokerage will still control its own organization. It'll have its own administrator. It'll create its own users, set their authority levels, turn them on and off. that type of thing. But what the client does is the client has the ability to put its own forms, give its own forms, give the brokerage access to its own form library for specific projects. So let's say that the client has, you know, a specific form they want to use in a certain state for a certain project. They can make that from their library available so that they know that what the brokerage is using is their lease form. It's very controlled, helps with the consistent output. But from the brokerage standpoint, the entire idea is to make the brokerage much more efficient. They get more work done for their client for the same amount of money. It gives them an edge over the other brokerages. Spends a lot less of their clients' money on doing paperwork. It also allows them to give the client a much more consistent product, a lot more quality control, and a lot more consistent output. The abstract assembler is another patent pending functionality we have in the system. It allows users to take information about instruments, you know, from recorded documents from the courthouse, put in the recordation information, and scan the document in, and then that instrument can be used over and over for a variety of things, namely the abstract assembler, but also to have them attached to ownership reports, create run sheets. You can actually submit lease packets through the system if the client also has a TotaLand license. But the abstract assembler in particular will take any number of instruments that are in, and the user just creates an abstract, attaches instruments to it, can put non-instruments in as well, like flow charts, tax certificates, anything like that in it, and just press a button and the entire abstract will be assembled with the indexing, page numbering, cover sheet, and everything done in mere seconds. A very popular feature. TotaLand.com is linked to the GIS environment. It makes an incredibly efficient use of it. Anything short of that, the mapping people will have to be updating information either by typing them into a shapefile for statuses, or for actually changing the color of polygons themselves. Polygons, simply a shape on the map that can then be linked to a tract. In the case of TotaLand.com, since there's no tract repetition or overlapping or duplication, that polygon is linked to a single track record. And since, if you recall the hexagon table relationship, since that tract is linked to everything else, we can get anything we want about the project through the map very easily. Some examples would be ownership, status, title, but even images. So an executed lease is scanned in, can be available through the map. Even date-sensitive information like expiration dates for top leasing type projects or lease checks. You see expiration dates and that type of thing. Image association, we've got a high degree of the user's ability to take PDFs, JPEG, spreadsheet, Word documents, everything, upload and categorize attached to things. So if you're in a tract, contract, party, instrument, anything like that, these images can be uploaded and associated but categorized, which is very important. The categorization is what allows us to manipulate them for packaging. So a big part of what TotaLand does is it takes images or Word documents or spreadsheets or whatever and outputs everything in secure PDF format. It'll merge documents in a controlled fashion, and it's the categorization that makes that possible. Broker and client billing is extremely popular feature of TotaLand. The brokers, it's almost effortless for them to do their billing online. All the information is put in by management. They simply just need to record the information that, like the description of what they did that day, their mileage, their meals, that type of thing. But the billing items are all by project, by day. The scanned images or receipts can be uploaded and processed. It generates their invoice in PDF and Excel, But in general, the office manager or the brokerage can just receive all the information through the site for managing it, and then the data is available for importing in other systems. And if our client has the license with us, they can actually receive the billing through the system as well. As far as the perspective goes, this is designed and run based on actual field experience. This is not just an accounting module or a land module of an accounting system, or built simply by programmers. This is built from years of experience of knowing what field landmen need, and is designed and being run from that perspective. Got tutorial videos and support tickets that greatly increase the user's ability to get answers. If there's a problem, we want to know about it. We get a support ticket, address it, and move on. Project types, there's a number of things that can be done through TotaLand, but the biggest areas would be lease checks, straight leasing, 3D seismic, pipeline rights of way, and top leasing. 3D seismic and top leasing are by far the most complex, where a system like TotaLand will shine. There's a massive amount of data, usually a massive size area information to be tracked. It's important to have some type of system in place, and TotaLand handles this type of thing very well. Straight leasing, of course, is pretty straightforward. It's you get your form, you put in your tract, your contract, your party, and you press a button and you've got a lease, and it's the information is already in there. Benefits based on respective users' needs. A field broker basically eliminates their paperwork. They can feel pretty good that their information is going to be more accurate because it's always pulling information straight from the database to populate the forms. It's going to be consistent, not only from broker to broker, but brokerage to brokerage, project to project. We're dealing with a form that is in a library that is controlled. Only the information from the database will populate into the form. Instrument handling, just a tremendous streamlining for those who have done a lot of work handling instruments. The fact that it can just be scanned, keyed in once, and then used all over the project, extremely valuable as far as saving time and frustration for the users, and of course saving the client money. For the management within a brokerage, they spend less time compiling data for reports, less concern for variation in output, as I said before, very consistent output. And then, of course, they save a lot of time processing the time and activity billing of their brokers. For the principal client users, their in-house landmen have real-time access to everything. They can track and comment on progress, and they can control their lease forms and their payment forms and that type of thing. Administration within a principal client, they will have the landowner payment tracking and approval, lease packet handling, and can receive billing through the system. And then for mapping, the incredibly streamlined approach where everything is done through the system. When a user creates a tract, it requests a polygon. Whoever is handling the mapping, whether it is the brokerage, the client, or TotaLand, will receive a notification that there's a polygon request pending. The polygon will be built, linked to the tract. If there's a problem with it, that problem is handled through the system. But the point is, it's only built once, and then when it's linked to that track record, it never needs to be updated again. Then it is saves, once again, a tremendous amount of time and money. From a technical standpoint, TotaLand.com is a hosted solution, which means it resides in a commercial data center that has the SSAE 16 certification, which is so important. Automatic, hourly, nightly encrypted data and image backups. Of course, we've talked a little bit about the user accounts, controller access to it, but even the documents are generated in secure PDF format, so it means it's automatically encrypted. And just a brief overview of the structure on brokerage accounts. There's an organization level authority. These are the managers and administrators. They will have the same permission across every project in the entire organization. Then they can also have pinpoint permissions to either add or restrict that level of authority. Everyone else is going to be a project level person or user. They could be a field broker on one project, a crew chief on the next, a project manager on the next, and there are also pinpoint permissions within that. On the principal client accounts, it's a little bit different. They also have the organization level people, the managers, administrators, and pinpoint permission. But then we've got the three groups below that, where we've got the organization-wide passive access, where essentially everybody in that company has the same access to every project in the company. Then we have group-wide passive access, where basically if projects are put into a group and a user is given authority to that group, any projects in that group that user will have passive access to. Essentially, that would be, if you're doing field-wide work, you're doing maybe some shale plays where you divide it into dozens of projects. You just name a project group and then put a user on that access, and they will have it without you having to manage that. Then other users you can just set to project level access, where they would be put on one project at a time. That is the end of the presentation. For further information, we've got more online videos. They're going to be narrated actually into TotaLand.com session, demonstrating some things. We can do web demonstrations, chat sessions, that type of thing. So we welcome your further interest, and I thank you for your time.